Alright, what is up guys? Losermaniac here, and welcome to a video that I hope does well, because I've been excited about this. If not, it's fine, I expected it. Welcome to the Mass Effect Legendary Edition review. Some of you guys who are new to my channel may not know this, I review video games. Yeah, and so today I thought I would, oh, that is the wrong set of notes. It's been a while since I've used this thing. So this isn't more of like a review rather than it's just my opinions, but no one cares about opinions nowadays. So, yeah. So, let's get things out the way first. For starters, this game is like years old. It's pretty old. It's been out for a while, like a good long while. Like, by the time Mass Effect, like the first time I got Mass Effect or played Mass Effect, there was, the three games had already been out and there was no plans of having another game anytime soon. So, and I think it was, I can't remember how long ago it was. So it was pretty far back. Actually, I think it was like a few years. I was still in high school. Let's put it this way. I was still in high school by the time I first started. I was a class of 2019 to put into perspective, so that it was out for a good while. At least the third game. So, yeah. So, with that being said, first things first, I usually don't do this on games that are over 2 years old, but since the game has been remastered, or remixed, or whatever, or remade, I guess, spoiler alerts. There are going to be spoilers to this game, because it's, I don't know. Actually, is there? Yeah, it's, I'll try my best not to give spoilers, but just in case, spoiler alert. I don't have any spoilers on here. Unless most of the spoilers in here are just romance options, so if you don't want to be spoiled of romance options, I guess, then whatever. But for the most part, this is gonna be pretty straightforward. I have to delete some stuff. Hold on. I went back and I played the first. I added notes from like the second game or from the third game. But I kind of messed up on some parts. I'll explain what it was. So yeah. So and then let's get some more shit straight. All right. So first things first. I first started playing this series with Mass Effect 3. I have a bad habit of like picking up games for the first time in like the middle of the series. It first happened with Assassin's Creed. I got Brotherhood instead of like the first Assassin's Creed, so there's that. And second, so yeah, I'm more familiar with this. So if you see me hint at something that's more pronounced or something in Mass Effect 3, that's why. And second of all, I've only done the soldier style in the series just because it was the first one I started with. And I'm pretty familiar with that one, even though I'm probably gonna have to do some other style to get trophies, but one step at a time here. So yeah. Also, it is very hot in here. There's a fan here, and I just got out of the shower like not even 10 minutes ago, close to it. So my breathing is gonna be a bit weird. So yeah, just keep that in mind. If it looks like I'm struggling with breathing. So yeah, 4 minutes into this, I haven't even started. Let's go. So first, this is more of like a pros and cons list. So just keep that in mind, because my review style is pretty bad. I always focused on one thing and then don't talk about the other half. Like I always focus on the positives and not the negatives, or vice versa. So for this one, I actually wrote down like pros and cons lists, some negatives and some positives. There's a lot of negatives in here because I focus on negatives. Some of this stuff is just confusing. So yeah. So first, let's start off with Mass Effect. And since I focus on negatives, and there's a lot in here, let's start off with the cons. So the first cons of this game is that it is pretty boring. Yeah. It's, I don't know. Again, I was very familiar with Mass Effect 3, and Mass Effect 3 is pretty fun, but it's, so with Mass Effect 1, you're limited to like 4 main planets or missions. There are like little mini missions inside of those, but for the most part, 4 missions just seems like a lot. So yeah, pretty straightforward there. It's just I don't know for its time. I I I don't know. It's Mass Effect 3 offers a lot more. So whenever I started playing Mass Effect 1, I'm like, this is it. Granted, I guess I did have high hopes because of the fact that I've played 3 already. So yeah. Next is limited armor usage. And by that I mean upgrading. You have to upgrade to use medium and heavy armor for certain characters. If you play the soldier, you already have usage to medium armor. But if you pick up heavy armor for humans, then you probably won't be able to use it unless you spec enough points to use heavy armor. And yeah, same thing with like people like Ashley, Kaidan. Liara doesn't have any sort of armors changes. She just sticks with light armor, which is fine. Because there's a lot of those, so it'd be like easier to upgrade her stuff with whatever. Um, but then there's squad mates like Tali, Rex, and Garrus, where they're limited to Krogan armor. Those where they're limited to Krogan, Quarian, and Turian armor, and those are pretty hard to find. You can only buy them. I've only ever bought armor that isn't humans from stores. I have found 1 or 2 different ones, but it was mostly Krogan and Turian. So if you use people like Tali, you're better off just buying off the armor instead. Yeah. So next is not a whole lot of weapons and mods, and they're confusing to understand. Mostly on the mods half. The weapons are pretty easy to understand. It mostly comes down to the fact that like if you have the Avenger, there's like 5 or 6 different types of Avengers, but it's the same gun and just added on top of it, and so on and so forth. So it's just like a version of just one gun repeated over and over. And the mods for these guns and armor are not very easy to understand. Like, first of all, what's the point of tracking level 7 enemies? I don't get it. I don't understand why that's a thing. Enemies are pretty much easy to see already. I barely use the radar anyways. The only time I ever properly use it is if I'm playing, or is if mostly Mass Effect 2 and I hit for me it's like the sticks. If I click on the sticks and it shows the direction it goes, that's about the only time I ever use the radar. Other than that, I don't use it. So maybe some people find it useful. I don't. And plus, if you're new to the game, they have organics and synthetics. Note, to this day, I still don't know the difference between the synthetic and an organic, and I don't know what qualifies as what. Is arachnite considered an organic or a synthetic? More likely, probably an organic, but that kind of leads to the suspicion of the fact that maybe Geth is the only synthetic in the game. That or maybe Husks. But Husks don't appear as often as Geth. So something tells me that maybe something like synthetics and organics specified stuff is pretty useless. So, there we go. Next is limited squad mates. A total of 6, believe it or not. Ashley, Kaidan, Liara, Tali, Garrus, and Rex. That's it. They're pretty good, don't get me wrong, but 6? Mass Effect has more than that. Mass Effect 3 has like 2 more than that. And freaking Mass Effect 2 has double that. I'll talk about that in a moment. So yeah, short amount of main missions being unreasonably long. I kind of touched on this in the pretty boring part. There's like 4, if you don't do the side missions, there are a total of 4 main missions, but each mission has like their own little like side mini missions on what to do. But yeah, it's still the main mission, and there are 4 of them. So who knows? Whatever. Boring ways of introducing squad mates. Kaidan is already in. Kaidan is already part of it. Ashley is just shown up after after Jenkins dies, and you just find her after her squad mates have been killed. All of her squad mates except her have been killed. Garrus and Rex show up, you just hire them. Tali you save, and then Liara you just break her out and then fight through stuff, but I feel like there should have been more. Mass Effect 2 and 3 kinda add on to that. Like there's more to it than just here they are, you now have them. Although I will say the most interesting one of the 6 is probably either Tali or Liara, because you actually fight in them. But with Garrus and Kaidan and Ashley, they just... Well, with Ashley and Garrus, you just ask them to join you. Well, that and Rex, you just ask them to join you, and then they just join you anyways. But, so, Liara and Tali, I would say, are the 2 better ones of the 6 to get as squad mates. Yeah. So next one is they made Ashley xenophobic, which isn't... Let me clarify right now. I don't have a problem with how characters are written. If you want to make a character racist, I don't understand why you would, but fine. That's how you do it. I'm not here to shit on how you wrote a character. But again, I'm used to Mass Effect 3. I will talk about that later, but just know Ashley's xenophobic. It's pretty straightforward than that. Next is the most confusing way to get to the Citadel. I actually had to Google how to get to the Normandy in the Citadel. Sorry, I think I said confusing way to get to the Citadel. Let me rephrase. Confusing way to get to the Normandy in the Citadel. It is pretty confusing. If you don't pay attention like me, then it's pretty obvious as to why. But like I mentioned before, I actually had to Google how to get to the Normandy in the Citadel. I felt so stupid. I was like, how to get to the Normandy from the Citadel. And it told you. I was like, really? It's in the C-Sec offices. If you didn't know. It's in the C-Sec office. So, yeah, there's that. Yeah, so next is grenade throws replaces reloads. Now, I do like the idea of infinite ammo, technically speaking, but... I'm one of those people, like, I constantly reload. If I fire one bullet, I have to reload. I don't know, I think I call it compulsive reloading disorder, or CRC, or CRD. I don't know why I said CRC. Compulsive reloading disorder. It's not an actual disorder, but it's just I just call it that just because everything's a disorder nowadays. But, yeah, it's basically where, like, no matter how many bullets you fire, if you fire off one bullet or 20 and have, like, one left over, I constantly reload. I don't know why. It's just, I have to be prepared, you know? And finally, of the cons, take squad mates everywhere you go. Oh, let me back up a bit. Grenades aren't that good anyways. I don't know why. But grenades as a whole are pretty terrible. I'm trying to make sure my grandma doesn't show up. So yeah. Thankfully, they got rid of it in number 2. Kinda. Depending on which one you get, it's replaced with flashbangs. Or flash grenades. But other than that, whatever. And finally, is you take squad mates literally everywhere you go. Whether it's the Citadel or goddamn Mars. The moon, wherever, you take squad mates with you. Again, I'm used to Mass Effect 3 where you go to the Citadel, you're just on your own. I find it weird that you take squad mates with you to the Citadel to literally do one damn thing. If you're trying to buy armor for Garrus, you have to take him. You have to take somebody with you. If you want to buy armor for yourself and that's it, then you have to take them. I don't get it. It makes no goddamn sense. And Mass Effect 2 is guilty with this, but it's a lot more lenient, I guess. I'm not sure. Anyways, let's move on to the pros of this game. There are about 5 in this. which is, for the cons that I have, I will say that the pros of this is that it's pretty basic for a first game. A lot of these first games just throw you in and that's it. I did say it was pretty boring, but I will say for the first game, it's not that bad. If Mass Effect 3 was like this, then maybe I'd have a problem. But it's not. In fact, I think I have a lot more positives. No. I still have a lot more cons than positives for Mass Effect 3. So yeah, it's pretty basic for a first game. I like it. As far as first games go, I like it. There are some better first games out there, but it's pretty good. This one's pretty good. Next is the Mako. I fucking love the Mako. It's pretty cool. I remember hearing that like the Mako was pretty hard to maneuver in the first game. So in the second game, whenever it was pretty easy to maneuver, I was like, this is difficult. And I saw an article that says a lot of things were changed with Mass Effect Legendary Edition. One of which was that the Mako was easy to control. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But the Mako is actually pretty good. Unlike the other vehicle in the game, which I think I labeled as a pro also. Yeah. So yeah. Next is Liara, Garrus, and Rex. Again, I'm used to the third game, so having someone like Liara, Garrus, and Rex in the first game is pretty cool. And the fact that Rex is a squad mate in the first game is also pretty cool. You get to have like a Krogan on your team throughout the whole duration of the first game. It's really awesome. So yeah, both of them are good in their own right. I forgot Tali, but I'm not that big of a fan of Tali because again, I'm used to Mass Effect 3. She shows up later in the game, so whatever. But as far as squad mates go, Liara, Garrus, and Rex are pretty cool squad mates to have. Another positive is that there are 3 romance options. It's pretty standard for the game. 2 for each gender. Ashley and Liara if you're male, and then Kaidan and Liara if you're female. So Liara is the bisexual of the group. So yeah, so 3 romance options is pretty good. It's a lot better than Mass Effect 3, and it's about the same as Mass Effect 2. I'll talk about that in a moment. I think I have that on here. Yeah, and one thing about me is I love romancing in games, but only if they're done right. Games like Cyberpunk and Mass Effect in the Mass Effect franchise do it well because they add to the ending. They add to the ending of the game in some sort of way. Fallout 4 doesn't do that. They just make romance options available just to have them. But in games like Cyberpunk and Mass Effect franchise, the romance options actually add something to the game. So it's pretty good. Maybe not in the first game or the second game, but definitely the third game. It finishes off in the third game. So yeah, there's that. What the fuck is... Oh. Alright. So yeah, and then finally, romancing is actually pretty easy. This is the only game in the franchise, well, that and Mass Effect 2, where you don't really need to have an import character to have romance options. Mass Effect 3 romancing, you have to have like a previous romance in Mass Effect 2 to finish off the romance in Mass Effect 3. But in this, it's pretty straightforward. I'm taking up. There's a lot of headspace that I'm not using. So yeah, pretty straightforward. All you have to do is just talk to them after every mission. And since there's a total of 3 missions, upon completion of each mission, you can talk to whoever you want to romance, depending on gender. And yeah, you do obviously have to say the right things. You can't just like be negative towards them throughout the whole thing, and then all of a sudden you have a romance. You have to like say the right things. And there's sex scenes. I do find it pretty standard. It's not as bad as Cyberpunk. So if you're playing these games and like people who are around you are like, it's not as uncomfortable. It's weird, but it's not uncomfortable because they're not naked. So it's still uncomfortable. Don't get me wrong. I I find it weird that I would have to explain to my grandma that there are sex scenes in a game where one of them is an Asari, which is a humanoid squid or something. It's like women who have tentacles as hair. That sort of thing. I'm not gonna explain it to her because it's weird already. But just like in Asari, it's just like it's basically females with like tentacle hair, and they're all blue, and they are biotic. And I have to explain biotics. It's a whole thing. So yeah. Next, we move on to Mass Effect 2. Cons in this. First is the weird generic male mouth problem that I've noticed. And I put as a side note Miranda romance because it shows up if you. It mostly shows up if you romance Miranda. They made like the mouth voice look like they're doing that like jaw thing. If you guys have ever seen those videos of whenever they put like mouth stretchers in their mouth so like they can't use their lips, that's basically what it looks like. On a certain point of romancing Miranda, I went back and I need to get Paramore 3 because I'm a trophy hunter. So, and I got Paramore 1 and 2 from like the first and third game as I finished off with Liara. So I need to get the third one. So I was like, okay, how about I romance Miranda? And so I did, and I came across that weird mouth problem that he did. If you use a generic male character. And that haunted me throughout the entirety of like the rest of the game, the rest of Mass Effect 2, even to like the romance scene with Miranda. I was just like, oh, that mouth was so weird. So it kind of bothered me a bit, but again, it comes to the point of like you have to like modify the mouth in some way to make it work. To me, it just seemed weird. And it is in the Legendary Edition also. I noticed that, like, I watched videos, it was, like, before Legendary Edition came out, so it was, like, standard Mass Effect 2, and that stupid mouth thing showed up again, so they didn't fix it, which I hoped they would have, which I'm sad they didn't. I didn't say I'd hope they would have. I didn't even play the first and second one. Whatever. Next on the cons is loyalty. The cock blocking of all things in this game. Especially if you want to romance Miranda, Jack, and Tali mostly. That's about it. Because I'll explain in a little bit. I think I have something here. Yeah, romance requirements. So I'll talk about it later. But as a whole, loyalty is a pretty weird thing to do. Mostly because, again, like I mentioned before, when you gain loyalties of certain squad mates, there will be like an argument between the two, and you can either side with either one of them or choose speech checks for Paragon or Renegade, which sucks because in one of those arguments, 2 romance options are involved. Both are for male, so you can like get to the point where you can romance both of them. But if you side with either one of them, then you lose out on the other one. So, for example, the one I'm mentioning is Miranda and Jack. Both Miranda and Jack are romance options to males. But after you gain the loyalty of both Miranda and Jack, Joker will let Shepard know that there's an argument going on in Miranda's office. And you have to settle it. But the only way to settle it is by either siding with either Miranda or Jack, or passing Paragon and Renegade speech checks like I mentioned already. Which can become a bit of a problem if, for example, you want to romance Jack. You have to side with Jack, leaving Miranda to hate you until you pass either a Paragon or Renegade speech check, which, yes, you have to pass. You have to pass those. And vice versa if you want to romance Miranda, which the first time I played through the game, the second time I played through the game, I had to do. I had to side with Miranda because I was romancing Miranda. So I find it. So it was pretty dumb whenever I came across it the first time. But thankfully, the first time I came across it, I had enough Paragon and I didn't know Paragon stuff, and it didn't matter. I couldn't romance any of them. I was playing a female. I was already dead set on Liara anyways, so there's that. And so the arguing shows up again if you gain the loyalty of both Tali and Legion. And again, Tali is a romance option for the male shepherd, but thankfully, Legion isn't a romance option for anyone. Thank God. Can you imagine that? So you could easily side with Tali, but again, loyalty is very much needed for the final mission, so I advise just siding with both of them and talking to them. Let me just say, side note, I struggled to get Jack to be loyal to me again after I sided with Miranda in the argument. I didn't have enough Paragon stuff. I had to respec my character to get the 100 extra Paragon points because I had a lot more Paragon, and then sure enough I passed it, and I was like, that took a lot longer than it took me 3 whole days. Or no, it took me not 3 whole days. It's weird. It took me like 1 whole day to figure out how to romance Jack. I had to, or not romance Jack, how to make her loyal again after siding with Miranda. I actually had to go on YouTube and figure out how to get all the Paragon stuff needed. As it turns out, I was fine. So yeah. So that's pretty much it. Loyalty as a whole, pretty dumb. I do like the missions. I will say, I do like the missions, but yeah. Next is bring squad mates with you almost everywhere. Again, the exception being in the case of Legendary Edition, the only exception being the Arrival DLC. That's about it. That's the only DLC. That's the only place that I know of that you do not have to bring squad mates everywhere you go. Otherwise, yeah. Loyalty clothes change nothing. They add nothing. Not even romance scenes. That's the part that sucks, alright? Let me explain. Let me explain real quick. Let me be a pervert for a minute and a half. And let me be a weirdo, because pervert's something different. So, some of you guys who don't know, I mentioned, or in case you remember, like a minute or so ago, I mentioned loyalty. With loyalty, whenever someone becomes loyal to you, they get a new outfit. It's pretty good for some, others not so much. Whatever. But my favorite loyalty outfit has, aside from maybe Grunt's loyalty outfit, is definitely Miranda's. It's just her standard outfit, but the white is black. That's it. That's all it is. It's pretty straightforward, and I love it, alright? The problem is, it doesn't show up in the romance scene with her. And I'm assuming it doesn't work the same way with Tali, Jack, Jacob, Garrus, and Thane. I'm pretty sure those don't show up either. But since I romance Miranda, I just know for a fact that her loyalty outfit doesn't show up in the scene. So there's no point in having these outfits aside just from aesthetics wise. If they showed up in the scenes or they did something like Miranda has like a 25% boost to her biotic damage, then maybe that would be it. Then maybe it wouldn't be on this list. Or, since I'm that shallow, if the armor shows up in sex scenes or romance scenes, I would have been fine with it. You know, have a little black on black for Miranda. You know, but they don't. The loyalty clothes, I said change nothing, but they add nothing to it, except for like maybe aesthetics. Which, if you like aesthetics, that's fine. But I had to work hard to get some of these. Alright? I had to work hard to make sure Jack was loyal the whole time. And Miranda. And they add nothing. And Legion is like the last squad mate to get the loyalty of, that I would hope it would add something. It would make them a lot more useful. And it would make me pick more squad mates than Miranda and Garrus. But since they add nothing, then what's the point? You know? I don't get it. So yeah, next is Liara becomes a temporary squad mate. Again, this is more along the DLC stuff, but since I am mentioning the Legendary Edition, This is where it comes in. Again, I love Liara. The first time I played the game, I romanced her in the first game. I didn't romance anyone in the second game, because I kind of got spoiled a bit, and I saw that Liara appears in the second game, so I just didn't. I chose not to send anyone. I chose not to romance anyone. But what bothers me is that the first and third game, Liara is absolutely amazing. She's a bit awkward in the first game, and then the third game she becomes a lot more badass. But in the second game, she becomes a temporary squad mate, not a permanent one, a temporary. Throughout the whole damn DLC, that's it. But if you romance her, you do get something nice out of it. You just get like one more like farewell to her until she shows up again in 3. But that's about it. Pretty straightforward. Yeah. Next is there are confusing upgrades. I actually had to Google what upgrades affect Miranda or Mordin or Jack or Garrus or whoever I'm not gonna lie. Aside from loyalty missions, the two people I always bring with me are Garrus and Miranda. So I was mostly looking for upgrades that benefit those two. And I didn't know that Miranda can be affected by tech damage. So if you upgrade tech damage in some way, you have an upgrade for Miranda. I think Overload. I think the Overload skill affects her tech damage. That's the only tech damage she has. Otherwise, she's a biotic. And tech damage is pretty easy. Is pretty just as rare as biotic damage. So there's no real reason. I didn't know that. I actually had to Google if Miranda is affected by tech damage upgrades. She is not as much as someone like Garrus or Mordin, but definitely up there. So yeah. Plus, it says upgrade squad's weapon damage for assault rifles. I don't know if that affects the character because they don't say. I feel like that's something I should know, but I don't. Something tells me I'm pretty sure that because in Miranda's Cerberus Officer perk, it does show that it increases her damage. It increases not only her damage and health, but it also affects the squad mates. So that's you and whoever you want to bring with you and Miranda. So it increases her damage more, obviously, because it's her. It's her perk. But other than that, that's pretty much it. So yeah, it kind of shows that, like, yeah, it affects all of the squad. But you are not a part of the squad. It labels as Shepard, not you, or not squad. So I'm assuming that, like, the increased weapon damage affects everyone but you. I'm assuming. I don't know. That's why it's confusing. I need to Google this stuff. Oh, damn it. Oh, well. It wasn't anything good. Yeah. Next is the suicide mission. I actually have this on the pros also. So, yeah. The suicide mission, I just feel like it's a pretty weird one. You have to, like, be specific with how things are. Because if you mess up once, then that's it. One person's dead. And the whole point of the suicide mission is to get all 12 or 10 out alive. I say 12 or 10 because the 12 is in Legendary Edition or if you have all the DLCs, and the 10 is if you don't. And you just have vanilla... If you just have vanilla Mass Effect 2. So yeah. But again, I'm speaking on behalf of Legendary Edition, so I have all 12. Yeah. Next is romancing requirements. Again, loyalty. Sucks. It sucks. Even though, again, I've only romanced one person in Mass Effect 2. And I did her loyalty mission pretty... She's always been the first one to do because she's only the first one that's available. It's either probably her and Jacob, I think, are the first two that show up. Who knew, right? So yeah, but the suicide mission is pretty nerve-wracking to kind of figure out whether I'm doing it right or not. Because I don't know if they tell you or you have to leave her for suspense. Because if it's left for suspense, then I hate that. But if it tells you, I hate that. So yeah. Oh yeah, I went from talking about romancing requirements to the suicide mission again. What the hell? Yeah, romancing requirements pretty straightforward. I kind of talked about in the loyalty mission. Next is 12 damn squad mates. 12. I don't use 10 of them, aside from the loyalty missions. The two people I end up using is Garrus and Miranda, because Miranda's a biotic and I use a soldier, and I don't like Jack, and Jacob's pretty fucking ridiculous. And Garrus just because I like Garrus. Garrus is pretty cool. Yeah, pretty straightforward. But 12? Come on, they don't. There were better. Okay, so let's say, for example, you have two really good biotics, Jack and Samara. If you end up using Jack a lot more, then Samara becomes pretty useless. Or if you end up using Samara a lot more, then Jack becomes useless because you have a pretty good biotics for each. So, yeah, there's that. And again, if you end up using Miranda a lot more, then Jacob becomes useless. They're pretty, because Jacob and Miranda are both pretty standard biotics, while Jack and Samara are pretty advanced biotic characters. So yeah, you kind of have to balance out between which one you want to use and which one you don't use. So I end up picking Garrus and Miranda because those are the only two I'm familiar with. So yeah, next, biggest con of all, is Zaid. I cannot stand this motherfucker. Alright, here's the thing you need to know about me. Alright, I am a Paragon person. I love being nice. I love helping people who need help. Zaid is not like that. Zaid's loyalty mission, if you want to help people, he gets pissed off at you. Which means the only way you can gain his loyalty is by passing speech checks. Which again, just like the loyalty arguments between Miranda and Jack or Tali and Legion, may be difficult to do in the first place or early on. That's why I advise saving Zaid and Jack's loyalty missions till like later on. But yeah, plus Zaid as a whole is a pretty snarky asshole. I don't like him. Yeah, finally, using cover now heals Shepard or everyone else. That's one of the things I forgot to add in the first game, is that you don't need to take cover to heal. You have first aid or Metagel for that. So yeah, that's pretty much it, really. I barely use cover anyways. I'm kind of, which I should, I'm kind of preparing for the Insanity, which I'll talk about in a video. But yeah, other than that, that's using cover now heals Shepard is pretty weird. I don't know why they didn't add it in the first game. That would have made it a lot better. Although I guess I understand why there ain't that much cover to use in the game. So yeah, now we move on to the pros. My favorite. First is customizable armor. That was one of the things that the first game missed, that the third game had, that I really liked, is that you can customize your armor however you want. You want to have pink on pink, you can do that. You want to have black on white, you can do that. You want to have red and fucking cyan. I don't know how you can get cyan, but you can have that. Plus, the armor's actually, different armor parts actually do something. Whether it's plus 10 to shields, plus 25 to melee damage, plus 10 to power damage, whatever it may be, they have that. It is pretty good. And that was one of the best parts of Mass Effect 3, it was the fact that I get to make my character look good and have benefits that I wanted. Yeah. Next on the pros, since Zaid was a con, Miranda is a pro. That's it. Best pro by far. Goddamn Miranda. Yeah. I don't need to say much there, do I? No, I probably should, because it's just, I feel like I should explain myself. Miranda as a whole is pretty awesome. She's a lot bad. She's very badass. The first time you meet her, she just shoots someone point blank because they betrayed, just because they betrayed Cerberus. It is goddamn awesome. Plus, in the actually, I should probably say that for the third game. She does something in the third game that's pretty cool, but I'll save that in the third game. I'll save that for the third game. So yeah, Miranda as a whole is pretty awesome. Plus, she's a romance option, and I love romance options in video games, as I've mentioned before. Yeah. Plus, I mean, her accent. Whoever voiced her, oh my gosh, they have the best accent I've ever heard. Oh my god. Now, before I move on, before I go 10 minutes talking about Miranda, let's move on to the Hammerhead. This one can be a con or a pro. Like I mentioned before, the Mako is pretty good. The Hammerhead's pretty good. The only con I could think of for the Hammerhead is that it's brittle as fuck. That's it. It's just brittle. Yeah. Better romancing management. Pretty straightforward. I find it funny that just like the Suicide Mission, romance management was both a pro and a con. That's it. I feel like with this one though, since there are loyalty missions, I feel like you kind of have to talk to your romance option before doing the loyalty mission, and then after you do your loyalty mission, you can then romance them. I think that's how that works. That's kind of how I do it. So more likely that's how it works. There was another con I had, but I'll wait until after I'm done with my pros, just because I don't want to go back and forth. So yeah, but better romancing management is something to think about. Especially if you're someone like me who just goes gung ho. Who went gung ho in the first game and is just after every mission just talk to Liara and then got it. With this one, you kind of have to like, if you started a romance, if you started having a conversation with both Miranda and Jack, but you didn't really go far with them, just out of like principle of like, I kind of want to romance both and see which one is forward, then that's about it. I will say the only downside to romancing management is with Jack, I think Miranda is the only romance option where once you start the conversation, you cannot back out of it. You have to decide whether you want to romance her or not. Otherwise, I think for other characters, it's just a matter of like, let's hold off a bit. I kind of want to wait this out and see. But with Miranda, it's like you either have to or you don't. You either want to or you don't want to. Those are the two options you have. You can't be like, let's hold off a bit. I want to make sure. No, you have to decide whether you want to romance her or not. That's the only downside I can see to this. I don't know if it works with Garrus, Jacob, and Thane. I'm not sure. Plus, the downside with romancing is Samara is not interested. Yeah. Samara is a romance option, but you go fucking nowhere with her. Kelly is the same way. Morinth kills you. I learned. Morinth kills you if you try to romance her. Then what's the point? Hold on, there's another Mass Effect 2 romance option. It can't be Morinth. There's one more. I can't remember. It doesn't matter now. Yeah. Next, we have the Widow Anti-Material Rifle. I love this gun. It's pretty powerful. Again, I haven't tried the other weapons, but I just know for a fact I love the Widow Anti-Material Rifle. It's pretty good for any sort of damage, whether it be barrier, shields, armor, whatever it may be. Put in a certain amount of... Use a certain amount of ammunition. Boom! There you go. You now have a powerful weapon that's useful against the certain ammunition type or you have a powerful gun that's powerful with the certain ammunition type that you use. It can almost one-shot every enemy you use, which if you use anti-armor rounds, it's pretty devastating. Almost, let me specify, almost devastating. So yeah, next is a Suicide Mission. I talked about the positive of this. I love the anticipation of knowing whether I'm doing it right or not. Again, I talked about how much I hated it, but I guess the only thing I hate about it is the fact that Jacob and Miranda volunteer for something that they are not good at, um, which sucks because I wish Miranda was just a lot more useful than leading the squad. If you guys remember from my last video, I talked about how Jacob says that he prefers to be like the hacker of the first phase, but he's fucking awful at it, but he's pretty good as a leader, and so is because you need someone to lead the second part of the group, which they're leading like most of the squad. They're leading about 10 or so 10 plus people, while you are leading two other people and helping a third. Hold on, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. They're leading, the second person is leading 7 while you are leading 3. Well, 2, and then the hacker. Anyways, but I love the feeling of not knowing whether I'm doing it right. So, yeah. Next, like I mentioned before, different ammo powers for certain enemy buffs. For example, incendiary ammo works well against armor. Disruptor ammo works good against shields and I think biotic barriers. Pretty good mixed with the anti-material rifle or the Widow. The Widow anti-material rifle. It's pretty damn good. So yeah. Upgrading more than weapons. You can upgrade armors. You can upgrade certain people's biotics or tech powers. You can upgrade your shields. You can that's pretty much it. You can upgrade Grunt's armor. You can upgrade Jack's biotic damage. You can upgrade Morden's tech damage. You can give Grunt a shotgun, I think. A better shotgun. And that's about it. Yeah. Next, a better Normandy. The Normandy in this one is a lot better than the first one. It took me my third playthrough to realize that the Normandy in the first game has a room for the character, and believe it or not, it's in Miranda's old room. It's in like the equivalency of Miranda's office in the second game or Liara's office in the third. What was once your room is now Miranda's and Liara's room. Who knew? And as a matter of fact, Liara has been in that room twice, or once if you didn't romance her. Who knew, right? It's weird. So yeah, there was another pro. I cannot think of it. Yeah. So kind of going back to Miranda, I was watching like Miranda romance videos, and I saw that like someone made a point of like the fact that the engineering room has windows, so people can like see the battery or see into it. And the fact that Miranda chooses the engine room to have a little fun in is kind of funny. Someone mentioned that, and I was like, that is damn funny. So yeah, there was another con I was going to mention. I can't remember. It doesn't matter now. So yeah, now we move on to Mass Effect 3, my favorite Mass Effect in this game. Cons first is the elusive man. The way he speaks sounds more like John Kramer from Saw. If you guys have ever seen that movie, if you guys haven't, it's pretty straightforward. It's about a guy who kidnaps people who doesn't appreciate their life. And he talks about how he's not a murderer, which, to be fair, I don't think he is. But he's very somewhat preachy in the movie, and in this game, the elusive man is very preachy about how we don't understand these people. We should let them happen to us. It's bound to happen. But then later you learn that he was just indoctrinated the whole damn time. So yeah, next, and kind of tying over to the first con of the first game, is that Ashley is no longer xenophobic. That's the only reason why I have a problem with Ashley being xenophobic, was because in the first game, I did not know her to be xenophobic. So when I learned that she was xenophobic in the first game, I was like, really? She is. Believe it or not, she is no longer xenophobic in the third game. It's weird. And in the second game, you meet her on Horizons. She talks about how she hates aliens, but Cerberus is a bit extreme. And it's just weird to me as to how she would go from being xenophobic to no longer xenophobic. Again, if you want to make a character xenophobic, that's fine, but make sure they stay xenophobic throughout the whole damn time that you see them. I don't know, it's just weird. Next is the con that I kind of had for the third game, which I didn't realize until after I played the first two, is that you have to play the first two games, import those characters to get a somewhat good ending or end results to certain missions. For example, to get a somewhat good ending, it kind of... Let's take the example of Priority Rannoch. To how that mission ends, usually if you did everything properly, did it exactly how you're supposed to do, with Legion and Tali being loyal and alive, Legion and Tali show up. You meet them in the third game, and then at the end of Priority Rannoch, if both Legion and Tali are loyal, and you meet certain requirements such as destroy the Geth heretics in the second game, which you meet if you do Legion's loyalty mission. If you destroy them, if you save the Admiral in the third game, and Legion and Tali are both loyal to you and alive, then you get a good ending for Priority Rannoch. Keep in mind, you need to meet requirements from the second game to make Priority Rannoch Rannoch and with the best possible way. And as another callback from the second game, if during the Priority Tuchanka, where you have to cure the genophage to keep people alive, such as Eve, then you have to do Morden's loyalty mission and save the data, plus some other stuff and whatever. But if you want to keep Morden alive in the third game, because spoiler alert, he ends up dying at the end of, or he ends up dying in Priority Tuchanka, to keep him alive, to keep Morden alive, you have to make sure Rex dies in the first game to make sure to keep Morden alive throughout the entirety of the rest of the game after Priority Tuchanka. So yeah, it's pretty dumb, but so whenever the first time I played the game, I hated the endings, and now I know why. It's because I didn't have the first two games because I didn't play the first two games to fucking get the good endings. Which, speaking of good endings, you have to get a high enough war asset. I didn't have it on here. You need to have a high enough war asset to get a good ending. Like, for example, you need, in the Legendary Edition, you need around 7,800 war assets to get the good ending, where at the Crucible, you have to destroy the Reapers, and by destroying the Reapers, if you romance someone, usually how it works, if you have less than 7,800, they would pin your name up against the like wall of memorials. But if you have 7,800 or more, it says like around 7,800, but I'll just say for this purpose, it's a minimum of 7,800 to get the good ending. If you have a minimum of 7,800 to get the good ending, and you beat the game with the war assets at 7,800 and more, and if you romance someone, then they don't pin your name on the wall because of the fact that they know you're alive, and it cuts to Shepard being alive. Who knew? So, but to get the good ending, and to get those good war assets, again, like I mentioned before with Priority Rannoch, you have to meet certain specifications from the second game in order for you to get the good ending in the third game. You see the problem here? Yeah. Speaking of good endings and romances pinning your name on a wall of memorials, in the second game, they completely sideline the best Mass Effect 2 romances. Preferably Miranda and Jack, I think. But the Citadel DLC makes up for it, kinda. So yeah, like I mentioned before, in the second game, Miranda and Jack play a big role in the game. They appear a lot more than they do in the second game. You meet Miranda first, obviously, because you're gonna have to. Actually, no, you would end up meeting Jack first, I think. But yeah, Miranda is off doing her own thing with her sister, and then Jack is just out helping Grissom Academy. That's how it is in the third game. The problem with this is, and someone made a point to it, the reason this is because they weren't expected to be alive in the third game because both of them can die in the suicide mission. But the problem is why would you make them show up in the third game if you expect them to die in the second game? It just doesn't make any sense. And now there could have been some like behind the scenes stuff. I'm not sure. Maybe like the voice actors of Jack and Miranda were like, I had it with this. Which, by the way, can I just say, Jack's voice actor is Nora from Fallout 4. So every time I have a conversation with Jack or I speak with Jack, I can't help but think of Nora from Fallout 4, and I just love that so much. So yeah, just a little fun fact for you. The person that voices Jack also voices the sole survivor, the female sole survivor, or Nora, in Fallout 4. So yeah. But yeah, they completely sidelined Miranda and Jack. But the Citadel DLC makes up for it, kinda, in the sense of, like, you can invite... So the Citadel DLC is basically where, like, you go up against your clone, you're on shore leave, you get to spend time with... You just get to take a break, prepare yourself mentally and whatnot. If you have romance options, you can invite them to your house, you can have a blast, you can hang out with them, kind of have, like, a little date night or whatever. And then at the end, if you finalize your romance with, in this case, I'll say Miranda. If you finalize your romance with Miranda, you can go on a date with her. And then at the end of the party that you have after killing your clone, that Joker recommends, if you invite everyone and Miranda is alive, you can invite her over to the party. And then at the end, you just wake up in bed with her. So it kind of makes up for that in essence, but that's not enough to make up for it. If you ask me, I kind of wish that there was more to it. Because, again, you had to work hard to get Miranda and Jack loyal to stay romantic, to stay with them. So, but whatever. Next, and this isn't me hating it, rather than I'm just confused, is that Kaidan is now bi. Like, like I mentioned before, in the first game, he only dates female shepherd, but now you can finalize your romance with him if you're a guy. I don't know if this was intentional or not, and if it was, I don't know if they explain as to why it was intentional in the game. But if it was unintentional, I feel like it took them then I feel like it had to have been intentional, because the game has been out for this long and Kaidan is now bisexual, meaning you can just date. You can now date them if you're male or female. I don't get it. I'm fine with it because there's more people than just because now Liara is not the only bisexual romance option in the game, but it is confusing as to now how Kaidan went from being only gender specific to now just whatever, you know? Yeah. Next is the amount of romance options in this game. I know I like romance options, but this one is a lot. Because in Mass Effect 1, each romance option, each gender had 2, one of which was the same person. Mass Effect 2, each gender had 3, Tali, Miranda, and Jack if you're male, and then Garrus, Jacob, and Thane if you're female. Plus there were some other like bisexual options, or like it doesn't matter male or female, doesn't matter which one, but they're there. But I don't consider those, because for this purpose I'm talking about gender specifics. But in Mass Effect 3, the male only has 5 romances, 3 of which have to be continued from Mass Effect 2, and the female has 3 two of which have to be continued from Mass Effect 2. So the male has Miranda, Tali, and Jack from the second game. You have to romance them in the second game to keep the romance going in the third game. But the two that is just standard is Ashley and Steve. That's for male, and for female, Garrus and Thane are the two romance options that have to be imported from Mass Effect 2 to be finalized in Mass Effect 3. And then the only female that doesn't need to be imported from Mass Effect 2 is Samantha Trainer. That's it. And I'm not including the three mini ones like Kelly, Samara, and Morinth Kelly, Samara, Kaidan, Liara. Although, yeah, just standard one gender specific. Just because those aren't gender specific, and two of those have to be if you started a romance with them in the first game or in the second game. But yeah, I just find it confusing because there's 5 different romance options, or 2 if you just play Mass Effect 2, or if you just start off with Mass Effect 3, or 1 that's gender strict and gender specific for the female. But otherwise, Kaidan, Liara, and that's about it, are the other ones that can be romanced without importing previous games. But yeah, next is that grenades are back, but in the form of powers. And my god, does the grenade suck. I don't use it because it's not as accurate as I hoped it would. Yeah, I just feel like there are better powers out there such as the concussive shot, adrenaline rush, and the different ammo types. And the concussive shot can be upgraded to where it can use the different ammo types and be used as that. So if you have a disruptor ammo, if you shoot a concussive shot, it can be a concussive disruptor shot. So it's pretty cool. But grenades, I'm not sure about that one. Yeah. So next is have to have romanced certain characters from previous games to finalize relationship, both male and female. I kind of touched on that. I don't know why I repeated it. Whatever. Yeah, Javik as a whole. Fuck Javik. I cannot stand him. Hi. Sorry, there's a puppy here. There's a little doggo here. But yeah, Javik as a whole, he almost reminds me of Johnny Silverhand, where just because Javik is a Prothean, 50,000 years in the past. He's from 50,000 years in the past of when the game takes place, which is confusing, but I'm not here to ask questions. Sorry, the dog just sneezed. But he thinks that he's all wise and shit, that he knows what he's talking about, yet a lot of his species died off. And then if you play the first and second game, you come across, or mostly in the first game, you come across a Prothean beacon. Javik sees that you have a Prothean beacon, and then he gets mad at you for not taking heed to his warnings, because nobody fucking believed them, because the Reapers are a bit ridiculous. And then another thing I have a problem with Javik, which I didn't realize was a problem until a few days ago, because I was watching YouTube. I'm still on Mass Effect 2, so I didn't come across this in any of my playthroughs. But if you take Javik with you to Thessia, you obviously have to bring Liara, because that's her hometown. But if you take Javik with you to Thessia, he kind of, in some way, the Asari worship Protheans. So, with that, it will make sense to take Javik with you. But after you finish Thessia, and you go to Javik's office, you can see that Liara is not happy with Javik. But, he's kind of an asshole who thinks that, I know what's going on, and so I know I'm right. And same things with Johnny Silverhand from, Cyberpunk, is that, even though, he died, 10 years ago in the game? I can't remember. No, 2013. It's a couple years ago, 30 years ago, or 30 years to 60 years ago. There we go. 64 years ago. He died 64 years in the past, or 64 years ago, and now all of a sudden Johnny is like, I know what's going on. I know how this world works. I am a god or something. No, but he has that attitude. And that's about it. Javik kind of just bothers me. And you can have a one-night stand with him in the Citadel DLC, which is very uncomfortable. So yeah. Just thought I'd point that out. Next is that Reapers are too powerful. They weren't this powerful in the second game or the first game, so I don't understand why they made these people like almost impossible to kill. I don't get it, but that's just how it is. I think it's ridiculous, but whatever. Next is Arya T'Loak. If you guys have done the Omega DLC or dealt with her, she's fine in the first game because she's not that big of a problem, but in the third game, she becomes a big problem, especially if you have the Omega DLC, where you have to like storm Omega with her, but you have to like complete certain missions to do so. Plus, again, I'm a nice person. I don't like killing innocent people. Plus, the person she wants to kill can also help you with war assets to help defeating the Reapers. So he's pretty useful there, but Arya wants him killed. So. Yeah. Next is the amount of goddamn Citadel missions. There are so many to do. Like, goddamn, there are more Citadel missions than there are actual regular missions in this goddamn game. I swear, there are so many. I don't get it. Why? Whatever. And next is Kai Lang. Kai Lang is stressful for me. I hate him. That's pretty much it. Pros, Miranda, again, pretty straightforward. Again, I didn't like the fact that they sidelined her, so the fact that Miranda even shows up in the third game is awesome. And she does show up in the third game, even if you just start with Mass Effect 3. I kind of want to go back and see, like, I kind of want to play the whole game and see who shows up from the second game. And who dies or who was expected to die in the second game, aside from like, I think Legion dies. I think the people who stay alive that are in the second game is Miranda, Garrus, and Tali. Those are the only three that I know of that stay alive in the second game. But yeah, so the fact that Miranda survives the second game is very heartwarming for me. Yeah. Anyways, upgrading individual weapons differently. This one was a lot better because I use the Vindicator. I love the Vindicator. It is a 3-shot burst gun that is very accurate if you use cover. So the fact that I get to upgrade that to max of 5 is pretty good, and I love it. And that's pretty much it, because you don't have to modify all weapons, and you don't need to know which weapons it modifies. And some of these upgrades don't affect squad mates only, because again, I'm a soldier. One of the weapons types that the soldier does not use in the second game is a submachine gun. But you know who does? Miranda, Mordin, and I think Kasumi. I think those are the only ones that use submachine guns. So the fact that there's like upgrades to upgrade Miranda's weapons is ridiculous. And just Miranda's is ridiculous. But the fact that I can now use the submachine gun but no heavy weapons, because heavy weapons is their own thing, and that's pretty good because the third game is already has a lot of stuff thrown at it. So the fact that I can upgrade certain weapons that my squad mates aren't going to use and not upgrade weapons that my squad mates aren't is pretty good. So yeah, next is easier to find stores, and there is a lot of them. There are a lot more stores in the first game than there are in the second game. I think there's probably like an even amount. I'm not sure, but the point is they're a lot easier to find, and they add a lot more stuff to it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Next, and this was a favorite of mine upon whenever I first played through the entire game the first time, is Mass Effect 2 Reunions. I actually got all 12 of them alive. They stayed alive at my first suicide mission, and the fact that I get to see people like Jack, Mordin, well, I got to see Miranda already because she shows up in the second game, or she shows up in the third, either way. Thane, Samara, not Zaid, I wasn't happy to see him. Jacob, that was pretty cool. To see all these different Mass Effect 2 reunions, it was so, I got so happy to see. Yeah. Next is that the Citadel is much easier to travel around. There are different elevators to take you to certain places. And there are certain areas for just stores, which is pretty cool. And the best part, you don't need to take people with you everywhere at all. It's pretty cool. Next is the return of Liara and Ashley or Kaidan properly. Liara shows up the second game or in the third game, second mission. Ashley and Kaidan, depending on which one you kept alive in the first game, just shows up out of nowhere in the first cutscene of the game. So to have them back was pretty cool, especially considering the fact that I mentioned this already. I romanced Liara in the first game, so just seeing her back was just, it warmed my creep heart. Yeah, straightforward romance. This one's a lot easier because you just talk to them to finalize it. You don't have to complete certain missions. You don't have to gain the loyalty of them. They're pretty straightforward. Here's how straightforward this is. Alright, let's say you romance Ashley in the first game. You romance Miranda in the second game. In the third game, you can finalize your romance with Ashley or Miranda. Or, what you can do is finalize your romance with Liara. Which means you can have 3 different romances, or 3 different finalized romances throughout the entirety of the game. It's it's that straightforward. Although granted, for Miranda, Jack, and Tali, you have to have the imported stuff. You need to have played Mass Effect 2 first. So yeah, it's really cool. It's pretty straightforward there. Yeah, properly modify squad mates, weapons, and mods. This was something in that was in the first game, but not in the second game. But the mods are a lot more easier to deal with, and you can have different modifications that are different from yours. So for example, you can have a scope on James's gun, but not on yours. Squad mates can all have different weapons, and different upgrades. So it's pretty cool to see certain weapons turned out pretty cool, or can be modified a certain way. And again, they can be upgraded. Yeah, I did say that you can modify squad mates' weapons and mods, meaning that like you can change weapons. So like if you want to make James have the Avenger and have Garrus have the Vindicator, you can do that. That was also in the second game. I guess I failed to take into account that you can give Miranda the Shuriken and then Mordin the Tempest. But other than that, that's pretty much it. But with this, you can add different mods onto them to make them powerful. I end up giving them all the same type of mods anyway, so it doesn't matter. So yeah. Next is that even though they're too powerful, I will admit the Reapers look pretty cool. The Husks, the Banshees, I'm trying to think, whatever the Turian one is, the Marauders, that's what it was. The Cannibals, all of them look freaking amazing. They look pretty cool. And next, sounds like nothing, but it's pretty serious for me. There are now homosexual romances aside from Liara. Yeah, Liara was the only proper homosexual romance in the game, which is from the first game, but only if you played as a female. But now, aside from Liara and Kaidan, each gender has their own proper standalone homosexual options. For male, it's Steve Cortez, and for female, it's Samantha Trainer. I didn't realize that Samantha Trainer was a female romance until I tried to join her in the shower in the the first time, and she's like, nah, I'm good. I liked Edie's. I told you I liked Edie's voice for a reason. So yeah. But it's nice to see that just because it's different, you know? And it's not usual to the first game. So yeah. And finally, Liara is a lot more better. She's a lot more confident. Yeah. Plus, she is the Shadow Broker also. So she becomes a lot more badass just because she is the Shadow Broker, but that's about it. So yeah, that's my review of the entirety of the Mass Effect games. I'm sorry this was so long. It was bound to happen, I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, let me know what you thought of this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like. I really hope you guys liked this because this is one I definitely wanted to try my best at. Even though I just went on a rant about how much I hated that Miranda was sidelined and how much I love Miranda. That's pretty much all pretty sure that's all I talked about throughout the majority of this video. It was just how much I love Miranda. Which was bound to happen. And if you did, leave a comment down below. Or with that being said, leave a comment down below. What are your thoughts on the Mass Effect series? And if there's any cons on the list that you could think of, let me know and why. I'd love to hear from you guys. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. And if you do subscribe, hit that bell notification because I don't have a schedule, so that way you'll be notified as to when I upload. Yeah, Losing Manic out.